What's up, everyone? Welcome to today's video. Welcome to the Video Game Fight School channel. Thank you very much for tuning in. So one of my audience members asked me to share my thoughts on why we don't have a traditional counter system like, say, the Arkham games or maybe something like God of War. Well, there's not necessarily a counter system in God of War. It's a parry system, and it's actually very well timed. But I think this is very interesting because I had to kind of track back to a lot of things and also track forward again for us to find a connection. And so I feel it's really interesting and I wanted to share with you. So why we don't have a counter system, I don't know, but the developers have implemented a system that actually allows for you to, in quote, counter. So let's go back and look at the developer Q&A from May of 2022. And somebody asked the same question and said, is there a counterattack mechanism? When Red Hood is fighting the Talon Gladiator, it looks like he's got some unblockable attacks coming in, but can you counter or block? And Jeff Eleanor replied and says, so we do counter, but as you spotted, it's not in a quick time event kind of way. Our combat system has regular and armored attacks, which means they can't be interrupted by normal moves. So you have to counter them with piercing abilities. Now, I'm going to stop right here because I want us to go ahead and look at Red Hood's piercing ability. So while they were actually showing the skill tree, they went ahead and not only showed the skill tree, they showed the momentum abilities menu, which is kind of a skill tree itself. And the very first attack there is actually a barrage. And if you look at it, it says Red Hood shoots multiple rounds straight ahead, hitting all enemies in his path. Ammunition is also reloaded. And underneath it, it says it's a piercing ability. So this is how Red Hood is going to, in quote, counter attacks that are coming at you that you can't necessarily block. And what's crazy is it actually gives you the button inputs to actually do this and tells you how much momentum it actually costs. So you're fighting, you build up momentum or momentum bar or momentum, I don't know what it is, parameters on your, momentum. I think it's like 4 different bars or something. And as an enemy is about to hit you with an attack that you can't necessarily interrupt with a normal move, or maybe you don't want to dodge it, you tap R1 and hit triangle. In this case, it's a PlayStation controller. If you're maybe using an Xbox controller, it's going to be R1. You hold R1 down and you tap Y. And this is definitely going to get the job done. So I think this answers the question as to how the combat addresses that. If you were maybe playing, say, another game like God of War, it's R1, but if you were to maybe do a parry, you have to, or perfect parry in the case of God of War, you have to hold down R1 at the time right before the attack hits you. And so your block is supposed to kind of coincide with the attack. It's a small window, but you can actually get it down. And then in this case of God of War, there's opening for you to do all kinds of fun stuff after you actually have a perfect parry. If you hit, I think it's R1 a second time, you use your shield and hit the enemy NPC. If you hit R2, then you slam into the ground, which if there are minions around, that AoE basically affects all of them and you can basically send them flying. So different games implement it differently. And I think this is the way the developers are wanting to implement theirs in Gotham Knights. So you can see the animation here. He basically shoots on this heavy enemy NPC, basically like a barrage, multiple gunshots. I think the enemy NPC was about to attack, but the way they cut it on the IGN thing, it doesn't necessarily show it very well. But again, it could be that, they just use this as a demo, but that's what the piercing ability is supposed to do if the game director is actually telling us exactly what it does, which I believe it's what he said it in May, and here we are in August, we're seeing it. So I don't see any reason why this is not the case. Now, he also further describes the guard and the block abilities, which, he also basically explains as to how abilities are designed for you to be able to, destroy or break this block. So he says some enemies also have block and we counter with guard break abilities. So our combat system has these layers where you sometimes need to provide a specific answer to specific problems. Many player power moves can't be interrupted after warm-up animation, so you can sometimes time that to your advantage. So that's also pretty cool. And just in the, just like he basically said in the skill reveal, the very next move is the mystical punch. It's a momentum ability as well, and it's a guard break. So what Red Hood does is he charges his fists with elemental effect damage, and melee attacks do 50% more damage and 5% more elemental buildup during the duration of this particular ability, which is 30 seconds. And all you have to do is tap R1 and square. In the case of an Xbox controller, it's going to be R1 and X. and he basically charges up his fist and he's ready to basically deal damage. So you notice that there are some really cool things that are here for you to be able to pretty much deal with different enemy NPCs and deal with different attacks, whether it is that you can counter them or not. Now, even in the regular skill tree, you can come back and actually realize that there's actually a skill where Red Hood can actually grab an enemy NPC that has a block ability, a guard ability. So a big enemy NPC, Red Hood can grab them. I can't remember exactly where they showed it, but if you want to go back and kind of like pilfer through the whole thing, you will see that Red Hood does have a lot of responses to this. So this is the answer that I found that we've seen in the gameplay. And I hope this pretty much answers the question. It is the combat design perspective and the design decision that they're going with. And to me, I think it's actually fine. You know, many games have different ways of doing things. So it's going to be cool for us to see how we actually are able to combine different aspects of the combat and then also use it to be able to, mix and match. I want to see how this combat actually flows in a sense. And I'm curious about it, but we look forward to seeing more. And hopefully you guys basically, this has probably served you in a way to kind of answer that question. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment section. What do you think about it? Talk to me. Peace out.